My wife got stopped for speeding. The cop checked her license, then took me aside. Sir, listen closely. Don't go home. Get to safety. I froze, confused by his pause. I can't explain yet. It's terrifying. Then he gave me a note. I opened it and uncovered a chilling truth. Okay, imagine this. You build your entire life from scratch, claw your way up from nothing, believing you've crafted this perfect world, a thriving business, a beautiful home, a loving wife. Then, in one gut-wrenching moment, you realize every single piece of that perfection was a lie, meticulously constructed by the very person sleeping next to you. What would you do if you discovered your whole existence was a carefully orchestrated betrayal? That night started like any other, just a quiet autumn evening. I, Wade Wu, was at my desk, poring over quarterly reports, when my wife, Jessica, announced she was off to visit her sister, Gail, for their usual wine and movie night. Nothing unusual, right? They were close. I kissed her goodbye, and I remember thinking how much effort she'd put into her makeup, even for a casual family evening. But 3 hours later, my stomach was churning with a dread I couldn't explain. I was following a patrol car on Highway 47, its lights flashing behind my Jessica's BMW. Pulled over for speeding. Speeding. The woman was the most cautious driver I knew, almost annoyingly so. The officer, Seth Mayer, was young, early 30s, with this earnest face that still believed in doing the right thing. As he ran Jessica's license, I watched his expression shift from routine boredom to something truly serious. His eyes kept darting between his computer screen, Jessica, and then me, with what looked like pity. He walked over, hesitant. "Sir," he said, his voice low. "I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not go home tonight. Get somewhere safe." My blood ran cold. What? Why? What's wrong? He glanced around nervously, then pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. "I can't explain now. It's horrifying. Legally, I can't do anything but—" He dropped his voice to a whisper. "That woman isn't who you think she is, and neither is the man waiting at your house." My world tilted. "What man?" I demanded, but he just urged, "Read the note tonight. Don't confront anyone. Just be smart about this." He handed Jessica her license back with a professional smile, but I saw the flicker of disgust in his eyes. Jessica came back to the car, chattering nervously about the officer being weird. I just nodded, that note burning like acid in my pocket. I suggested we grab dinner before heading to Gail's, desperate to buy myself time. In the restaurant bathroom, my hands shaking, I unfolded the paper. "Your wife has been seeing Patrick Mullins for 8 months. Tonight, he's in your house going through your safe. She gave him the combination. There's more. Much more. She's been planning this for years. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more. A friend who remembers you helped his family when no one else would. Patrick Mullins." The name hit me like a physical blow. He'd worked at my first shop 5 years ago. Charming, quick hands, and quicker excuses for why cash kept coming up short. I'd fired him, but I hadn't pressed charges, believing everyone deserved a second chance. Apparently, he'd been planning his revenge ever since. But Jessica? My Jessica? We'd been married 15 years. We'd built everything, survived my mother's cancer, her father's passing, my bankruptcy. Struggles that should have forged us into an unbreakable team. I folded the note, walked back to the table, my face a careful mask. Jessica was texting someone, her phone angled away. Something I'd never noticed before, but now it was glaring. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, without looking up. "Perfect," I replied. And for the first time in my marriage, I meant the exact opposite. The drive to Gail's was 20 minutes of pure torture. Jessica kept checking her phone, and I started cataloging every lie. Every late night at work. Every weekend trip to see college friends I'd never met. The foundation of my life wasn't just cracking, it was revealing there had never been a foundation at all. When we arrived at Gail's, I claimed a work emergency and had to head back. Her relief was so palpable, it was almost comical. She kissed me goodbye with the same lips that had probably been kissing Patrick Mullins. I clenched my fist, fighting the urge to grab her then and there. But I hadn't built an empire acting on impulse. I'd learned patience from my father, strategy from my grandfather, and ruthlessness from the streets that tried to keep me down. If Jessica and Patrick thought they could destroy everything I'd built, they were about to learn what a fatal mistake that was. As I drove toward downtown instead of home, my plan began to form. They thought they were playing me, but they had no idea they'd just started a game with someone who never lost. I checked into the Riverside Hotel, paying with cash, a habit from my youth that my success had never quite erased. From my fifth-floor room, I had a clear view of my house, 3 miles away, now a beacon of betrayal. I called my lawyer, Oliver Doyle, who owed me more favors than either of us could count. Oliver had been a struggling public defender when my first shop was vandalized. I'd handled it personally, and the message I delivered meant Oliver never had to worry about his family's safety again. Oliver, I need surveillance equipment, professional grade, delivered to my room in 2 hours. And I need everything on Patrick Mullins, employment history, criminal record, financials, associates. Everything. The silence stretched. At 12:47 a.m., I saw a figure emerge from my side door, the one only family was supposed to use. Even from this distance, I recognized Patrick's swagger. He was carrying a bag, suspiciously like the emergency cash stash I kept in my study. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Staying at Gail's tonight. She's having a hard time. Love you. I didn't respond. Oliver arrived at 2:15 a.m., carrying a case full of GPS trackers, audio surveillance, micro cameras, and Patrick Mullins's complete digital file. Wait, he said, whatever you're thinking of doing. I'm thinking of protecting what's mine. I cut him off, my voice flat. The legal system protects people like them. I protect people like me. Oliver left without another word. I spent the next hour dissecting Patrick's life. A textbook narcissist, seducing married women, draining accounts, disappearing. He'd done it in 3 different states, always staying just on the right side of criminal charges. But he'd made a crucial error this time. He'd chosen my wife. Patrick wasn't just a thief, he was predictable. He followed the same playbook, seeking not just money, but humiliation, the complete conquest of another man's world. And because he'd never faced real consequences, he'd get careless. I smiled for the first time since that note. Patrick Mullins had no idea what real consequences looked like. By dawn, I had a preliminary plan. I would give Patrick exactly what he wanted, complete access to my world. But like a spider offering its web to a fly, that access would become a trap. My phone rang. Jessica. Hi, honey. How did your emergency go? Fine. Just a problem with the Morrison contract. The lie came easily. How's Gail? Better. Listen, I might need to stay another night or 2. She's really struggling. Of course, I said. Take care of your sister. After hanging up, I looked up Gail's number. Gail? It's Wade. I just wanted to check on you and make sure you're okay. The confusion in her voice was all the answer I needed. She was fine. Hadn't seen Jessica in 2 weeks. I thanked her and hung up, adding another lie to my ledger. Jessica hadn't just betrayed me, she'd crafted an entire alternate reality to do it. But I grew up on the streets. And the streets taught me that people who live in fantasies die when reality comes calling. It was time to introduce Patrick and Jessica to reality. I returned home that afternoon, walking through my house like a crime scene investigator. The safe in my study had been opened and closed, expertly. No scratches, no disturbed dust. Professional. My hidden camera confirmed it. Patrick Mullins at 11:23 p.m., photographing documents, copying files, pocketing my emergency cash and backup credit cards. But the most chilling moment was when he held up my wedding photo, smiled at it like a private joke, then carefully placed it face down. I watched the footage 3 times, memorizing every casual violation. Then I called my old friend Clarence Camolmes. Clarence ran a security firm, which was a polite way of saying he handled problems that couldn't be solved through legal channels. When his daughter needed surgery that insurance wouldn't cover, I'd paid for it without being asked. That kind of debt runs deeper than money. Clarence, I need a full team. Surveillance, counter-surveillance, asset protection. And I need people who understand that some problems require permanent solutions. How permanent are we talking, Wade? He asked. I'll let you know. Within hours, my house was wired with professional equipment that made Oliver's setup look like children's toys. More importantly, Clarence provided something invaluable: information. Your boy Patrick has debts, Clarence reported over dinner at a truck stop. Serious debts to serious people. He owes money to some Russian import-export specialists who don't accept payment plans. Word is he needs a big score soon, or he's going to have more problems than a cheating wife can solve. How much? I asked. $250,000, plus interest that compounds daily. I leaned back. Pieces clicked into place. Jessica wasn't just his target. She was his lifeline. It gets better, Clarence continued. I ran some checks on your wife's financial activity. She's been moving money for months. Small amounts, different accounts, always just under the reporting thresholds. Someone taught her how to wash money without triggering flags. The waitress refilled my coffee. I waited until she was gone. How much? Best estimate? She's moved about $400,000 over the past year. Money from your business accounts, your personal savings, even small amounts from your retirement fund. My vision went red around the edges. $400,000. Years of 18-hour days, deals made in back alleys and boardrooms, sweat and blood. There's more, Clarence added. The money didn't just disappear. It's been invested. Real estate purchases in Patrick's name. Some offshore accounts, a few business ventures that don't exist on paper. They've been building a future together, Wade. A future financed by your past. I set my coffee cup down with deliberate care. I want to know everything. Every account, every purchase, every lie they've told each other. I want to know what they eat for breakfast and what they dream about at night. I met Clarence's eyes. He saw something there that made him glad we were on the same side. Then I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. That night, I lay in the bed I'd shared with Jessica for 15 years, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I would begin implementing a plan that would make Patrick and Jessica's betrayal look like a children's game. They thought they were stealing my life, but they were about to discover that some men couldn't be stolen from. They could only be awakened. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jessica. Miss you. Home tomorrow night. Can't wait to see you. I typed back, can't wait either. We need to talk about our future. For once, I was telling the truth. I woke before dawn, going through my morning routine like a man preparing for war. Coffee, shower, workout, then a careful review of the previous night's surveillance footage. Jessica had returned at 2:47 a.m., moving like a ghost, checking her phone constantly, even smelling my pillow. When she finally woke at 9:30, I was already gone, ostensibly to work, but actually to begin phase 2. My first stop was Maria Gamble, a private investigator specializing in financial crimes. She'd helped me before, uncovered embezzlement that saved me from a disastrous merger. I need complete financial profiles on these two, I said, sliding photos of Jessica and Patrick across her desk. Every account, every transaction, every asset, legal and illegal. Maria studied the photos. Your wife? My soon-to-be ex-wife. She warned, this isn't cheap, Wade. Deep financial investigations take time and resources. I placed a briefcase on her desk and opened it. $50,000 in cash. How much time do you need? 72 hours. You have 48. Next, I visited my accountant, Hal Stevens. Hal, I need you to restructure everything. Transfer ownership of the shops to a new corporation. Move all liquid assets to accounts Jessica can't access and create a paper trail showing the businesses are struggling financially. Hal went pale. Wade, if you're going through a divorce, this could be considered asset hiding. The courts won't be involved, I said, my tone flat. I'm not getting divorced, Hal. I'm getting justice. The difference in my voice made him stop asking questions. By afternoon, I'd visited each of my shops, ostensibly for inspections, but really to plant seeds of a much larger plan. I spoke privately with key employees, asking questions about loyalty, about what they'd do if the business faced serious threats, about keeping sensitive information confidential. Loyalty couldn't be bought, but it could be cultivated. Everyone remembered my kindnesses, Christmas bonuses when their kids needed surgery, promotions when other shops wouldn't hire them, second chances when their mistakes could have cost them everything. By evening, I'd assembled a network of allies who would do almost anything to protect the man who had protected them. The final stop was the most important, a meeting with James Hernandez, a business consultant whose actual function was solving problems conventional means couldn't touch. We met at a private downtown club where conversations weren't recorded. "I have a situation," I began, outlining the betrayal, the theft, the complete violation. When I finished, James was quiet. "What's your endgame, Wade?" "Complete destruction. I want them to lose everything they've stolen from me and everything they think they own. I want them to understand what it feels like to have their entire life revealed as a lie. And if they fight back." My smile was cold. "They're welcome to try." James nodded. "This isn't just about money, is it?" "No," I said. "It's about respect, about consequences, about teaching two people that there are men in this world who can't be stolen from, only awakened. I can have resources in place within a week. You have 3 days." I drove home to find Jessica cooking dinner, humming softly, playing the devoted wife with an expertise that would have been admirable if it weren't so completely false. She kissed me. I had to suppress the urge to grab her throat and demand the truth. Instead, I played my own role, the trusting husband, the successful businessman, too comfortable to notice his life being dismantled. "How is work?" she asked, her voice bright with false concern. "Interesting," I replied. "I've been thinking about expanding, maybe opening a 4th shop." Her fork paused. "That sounds expensive." "I've been looking at a place across town. Perfect location, but it would require a significant investment. Might need to liquidate some assets to make it work." The flash of panic in her eyes was brief, but I saw it, cataloged it. "Maybe we should discuss any major financial decisions together," she said carefully. "Of course," I replied. "After all, we're partners in everything." That night, as Jessica slept beside me, I lay awake, planning the systematic destruction of two people who had made the mistake of thinking Wade was just another mark. They were about to learn that some men weren't victims. They were predators. The call came at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after I'd set my plan in motion. Maria Gamble's voice was tight with excitement and disgust. "Wade, you need to see this. Can you be in my office in an hour?" I arrived to find her desk covered with documents, photos, bank records. "Your wife is smart," Maria began, "but Patrick Mullins is smarter. And greedier." She spread out statements. "Jessica has been moving your money for 14 months, not 8. But here's the interesting part. Patrick's been moving her money too. Every account she set up, every investment she made with your stolen funds, he's been skimming from. She thinks they have $400,000 together. He's actually got closer to $600,000, and $300,000 of it is hidden from her." A cold satisfaction settled in my chest. "He's planning to disappear. More than that, look at this." Maria produced a lease agreement. Patrick signed a 2-year lease on a house in Jessica's name, using her social security number and a forged signature. If things go south, she's liable for 24 months of rent on a place she's never seen. "Where?" I asked. "Costa Rica. Non-extradition jurisdiction for financial crimes under $50,000 per incident." I leaned back. Patrick wasn't just stealing from me. He was setting Jessica up to take the fall for everything. When it was time to disappear, he'd leave her holding the bag for fraud charges while he lived comfortably on money stolen from both of us. "There's more," Maria continued. "Patrick's been recording everything. Phone calls, hotel meetings, even intimate encounters. He's got enough evidence to destroy Jessica's reputation and implicate her in every aspect of the theft, while painting himself as a manipulated victim." I felt a flicker of what might have been admiration for Patrick's thoroughness if it weren't directed at destroying my life. The man was a professional predator. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd assumed Wade was just another mark. "I need copies of everything," I said. "And I need you to do one more thing." That afternoon, I implemented the next phase. I called Jessica at work and asked her to meet me for lunch at our favorite restaurant, the same place we'd had our first date 16 years ago. She arrived looking beautiful and nervous, checking her phone constantly, what I now recognized as Patrick maintenance. I've been thinking about our future, I began, echoing my text. About what we want out of life. What do you mean? She asked. I pulled out a folder and set it on the table. I think it's time for us to make some changes. Big changes. Her face went pale as she opened it. The first document, a property listing for a house in Costa Rica with photos and a purchase agreement. Wade, what is this? She whispered. Our new life. I've been looking into retiring early. Maybe moving somewhere we can really be ourselves. I watched her carefully. I found this place through a business associate. Patrick Mullins. You remember Patrick, don't you? He used to work for me. Her hand trembled. I don't understand. Patrick's been helping me research expatriate living, taxes, property laws, the best ways to transfer assets internationally without triggering government oversight. My voice was casual. He's got quite a bit of experience with international finance. The color drained from her face. She realized I was describing exactly what she and Patrick had been doing with my money. But I was presenting it as my idea, something I planned to do legally. Wade, I don't think. Patrick suggested we could liquidate most of our domestic assets and reinvest them offshore. He estimates we could have everything transferred within a month if we move quickly. Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went from pale to gray. Whatever Patrick had just sent her, it wasn't good news. I need to go, she said suddenly, closing the folder. I'm not feeling well. Of course, I said. Take the folder. Look it over, and we can discuss it tonight. I watched her hurry out, clutching the folder like it was evidence of her own execution. Because, in a way, it was. Jessica now had to choose. Warn Patrick that Wade somehow knew about their plan, risking exposure of their entire relationship, or stay quiet and hope Wade's interest in Costa Rica was coincidental. Either choice would lead to the same result. Patrick would realize the situation was too dangerous and begin implementing his exit strategy, which meant cutting Jessica loose. My phone buzzed. A text from Clarence. Package delivered. Phase 3 was ready. That evening, I came home to find Jessica pacing the kitchen, the Costa Rica folder open on the counter, her phone pressed to her ear. She hung up quickly when she saw me. Everything okay? I asked. Fine. Just work stuff. Her smile was strained. I looked over those documents. It's an interesting idea, but maybe we should think about it more. Actually, I said, I was hoping we could speed things up. Patrick thinks there might be some regulatory changes coming that could make transfers more difficult. Jessica's face went through a series of micro-expressions: fear, confusion, calculation, desperation. I cataloged each one. Maybe we should meet with Patrick together, she said finally, so he can explain the details to both of us. I smiled. Great idea. How about tomorrow night? After Jessica went to bed, I called Clarence. Tomorrow night, Patrick Mullins is going to realize he's been outplayed. I need you to make sure he doesn't have any options for running. Consider it done. I hung up and walked to my study. I opened my safe and removed the item Clarence had delivered that afternoon, a digital recorder containing every conversation Patrick and Jessica had shared over the past month. Their hotel room had been a confessional booth. I'd heard my wife's voice describing how easy it would be to bleed me dry, how Patrick made her feel alive in a way I never could, how they would disappear once they had enough of my money. But the most interesting conversation had been Patrick explaining to Jessica how he would eventually need to cut ties cleanly when the time came to relocate permanently. Jessica had no idea she was talking to a man who was planning to destroy her life along with mine. I smiled as I locked the recorder back in the safe. Tomorrow night, Jessica and Patrick would discover that they weren't the only ones capable of planning a betrayal. They were just the only ones stupid enough to think they could get away with it. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at Morton's Steakhouse, neutral territory where both Jessica and Patrick would feel comfortable. I arrived early, selecting a corner booth with clear sight lines to all entrances. Old habits from a youth spent in environments where sitting with your back to a door could be fatal. Jessica arrived first, her nervousness obvious. Patrick entered precisely at 7. I had to admire his composure. He showed no sign of recognition beyond a polite smile, no indication he'd been systematically looting my life for over a year. He was good at his craft. "Wade, good to see you again," Patrick said, extending his hand with perfect confidence. "Jessica's told me you're interested in some offshore opportunities." "Very interested," I replied, studying his face. "Understand you have considerable experience with international asset management." "Some," Patrick said modestly. "I've helped a few clients diversify their holdings in favorable jurisdictions." I nodded and pulled out a briefcase. "I've brought some documentation you might find interesting." Patrick's eyes flicked to the briefcase, then to Jessica, who had gone very still. I opened the briefcase and removed 3 folders, setting them on the table with deliberate precision. The first folder contains financial records from my businesses over the past 18 months, I began. Revenue, expenses, asset transfers, the usual. Patrick relaxed slightly. This was familiar territory. The second folder, I continued, contained surveillance photographs taken over the past month. Patrick's face didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Jessica made a small sound, almost a whimper. The third folder contains transcripts of conversations between various parties regarding my finances, my marriage, and certain planned relocations to non-extradition territories. The silence that followed was profound. Patrick's hand had stopped moving toward his water glass. Jessica stared at the folders like they were venomous snakes. "Now," I continued conversationally, "we can discuss this like civilized people, or we can involve other parties. Your choice." Patrick recovered first, as I expected. Predators are always quick to assess new threats. "Wade, I think there might be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." I opened the first folder and removed a bank statement. "Jessica, would you like to explain to Patrick why your signature appears on this withdrawal authorization for $50,000 from my business account?" Her face crumpled. "Wade, please, or Patrick, perhaps you'd like to explain why you relist as the beneficiary on a life insurance policy Jessica took out on me 6 months ago." That got Patrick's attention. I'd saved this revelation for maximum impact, and a look of genuine surprise on his face told me everything I needed to know. Patrick hadn't known about the policy. Jessica had been planning contingencies that didn't include her lover. His voice was carefully controlled, but I caught the edge of betrayal underneath. $2 million, I said. With Jessica as the primary beneficiary, and Patrick Mullins as secondary. Interesting arrangement, don't you think? Patrick turned to Jessica with an expression that would have been terrifying if I hadn't been enjoying it so much. "You didn't mention any insurance policies." "I wanted to protect us," she cried. "Protect us or protect yourself?" I leaned back, watching their alliance fracture in real time. This was why I'd included the insurance information, even though discovering it had been the most chilling moment of my investigation. Jessica hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been considering if my death might be more profitable than my betrayal. "There's more," I said, opening the second folder. "Patrick, are you familiar with the name Arturo Haynes?" Patrick's face went white. "How do you?" "Arturo is a business associate of mine, has been for years." Imagine my surprise when he mentioned someone had approached him about arranging an accident for a prominent local businessman. This was a lie, but I delivered it with such casual confidence that both Jessica and Patrick believed it completely. The art of psychological warfare was making your enemies destroy themselves with their own guilt and paranoia. "Wade," Jessica whispered, "we never." "Never what?" "Never planned to kill me or never planned to get caught." Patrick stood abruptly. "I think this conversation is over." "Sit down," I said quietly, and something in my voice made him freeze. "You haven't heard the best part yet." I opened the third folder and removed a photograph of Patrick entering a hotel room, followed by another of him leaving 3 hours later with a briefcase. "That's the Riverside Hotel, room 237. Last Tuesday night." The briefcase contains approximately $15,000 in cash that Jessica doesn't know about. Jessica turned to Patrick with an expression of dawning horror. "What is he talking about?" "Or we could discuss the house in Costa Rica that Patrick leased in your name, Jessica. The one you'll be liable for even after he disappears with the money you've both been stealing from me." The trap was now fully sprung. Patrick realized he'd been outmaneuvered. Jessica realized she'd been betrayed by both men in her life. I sat back to watch them tear each other apart. "You bastard!" Jessica hissed at Patrick. "You were planning to leave me holding everything. And you were planning to murder your husband." Patrick shot back. "Don't pretend you're innocent in this." I smiled. "Actually, you're both going to have bigger problems than each other very soon." I removed my phone and showed them the screen. It displayed a text, "Package secured. Awaiting instructions." Clarence Comolmes has been monitoring this conversation. He's also been monitoring both of your residences, your financial accounts, and your communications. In approximately 10 minutes, federal agents are going to raid Patrick's apartment and Jessica's office. This was another lie, but I was counting on panic to prevent logical thinking. What they'll find is evidence of systematic fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. They'll also find evidence that Jessica has been embezzling from her own company to fund this operation. Jessica's face went ashen. She worked as an accountant for a major firm. Any financial irregularities would end her career, even if they didn't result in criminal charges. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Patrick, you're going to transfer every penny you've stolen from me back to my accounts. All of it, including the money you've hidden from Jessica. And if I refuse?" Patrick's bravado cracked. My smile was cold. "Then you'll find out what happens when you steal from someone who grew up in neighborhoods where thieves didn't live long enough to repeat their mistakes." Patrick's defiance crumbled. "You're threatening me?" "I'm promising you." I turned to Jessica. "And you, my dear wife, are going to sign divorce papers that leave you with exactly what you brought to this marriage 15 years ago." "Nothing." "Wade, please. You had 15 years to be honest with me. You had 1,000 opportunities to be the woman I thought I married. Instead, you chose to be a thief and a liar." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I stood and placed $500 on the table. "This covers dinner. You have 24 hours to comply with my terms. After that, other people will handle the situation, and they won't be as generous as I'm being." I walked away, leaving Jessica and Patrick to face the wreckage of their carefully planned betrayal. Behind me, I could hear them arguing, accusations flying. The sound of two predators turning on each other when their prey proved too dangerous to handle. The real revenge was just beginning. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my first auto shop, the one I built with borrowed money and 18-hour days when I was 25, hungry enough to fight for every dollar. I sat in my office until dawn, watching surveillance footage of Patrick and Jessica's increasingly desperate phone calls and text messages. By 3 a.m., Patrick had attempted to access 3 different bank accounts, only to discover Clarence's people had frozen all his assets pending a federal investigation, a fiction that would hold long enough for my purposes. Jessica had called in sick to work and spent 2 hours frantically searching her apartment for documents that would prove her innocence of crimes she was actually guilty of. "I'm listening." Patrick's voice was shaky on the phone. "This has gone too far. Let's work something out." I smiled. Desperation always sounded the same. "I gave you my terms yesterday. Have you complied?" "I can't transfer money from frozen accounts." "Then you'd better figure out how to unfreeze them. Permanently. I want you to understand that stealing from Wade was the worst mistake of your life. And I want you to spend whatever time you have left remembering that lesson." Then my voice went cold. "And Jessica?" "Jessica is my wife. What happens to her is between her and me." I hung up and immediately called Clarence. "How long until Patrick cracks completely?" "He's already cracking. My boys picked up some interesting chatter this morning. Seems Patrick's been in contact with those Russian friends of his, trying to negotiate more time to pay his debts. And Russians aren't known for their patience. Word is they're sending someone to discuss the matter with Patrick personally." A dark satisfaction settled in my chest. Patrick's past was catching up with him at exactly the moment his future was disappearing. Perfect timing. Make sure the Russians know where to find him. Already handled. My second call was to Oliver Doyle. I need divorce papers drawn up. Adultery, fraud, theft of marital assets. I want everything protected under irreconcilable differences with evidence of criminal activity. Wade, if you have evidence of criminal activity, you should involve law enforcement. Law enforcement moves too slowly. I need this handled privately. What about Jessica? She'll fight this. My laugh was humorless. Jessica is going to be too busy trying to stay out of prison to fight anything. By noon, I'd received confirmation that Patrick had attempted to flee the state, only to discover his passport had been flagged for suspicious financial activity. TSA detained him for 3 hours before releasing him with a warning that his travel was being monitored. My third call of the day was to Jessica. We need to meet. Her voice was shaky, defeated. I'll sign whatever you want. Good. My lawyer's office. 3 p.m. Wade, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. I considered this. No, you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. The divorce proceedings took less than an hour. Jessica signed every document without reading them, her hands shaking with exhaustion and fear. When it was over, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now you learn to live with the consequences of your choices. Will you press charges? I studied my ex-wife's face, seeing perhaps for the first time the person she actually was beneath the mask she'd worn for 15 years. Weak, selfish, willing to destroy anyone to get what she wanted, but ultimately, a small person who had made the mistake of trying to prey on someone stronger. No, I said finally. You're not worth the effort. The relief on her face was pathetic. She actually thought she was getting away with it. I walked out of the lawyer's office a free man, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. That evening, I sat in my study and made one final call. Clarence, it's time. You sure about this, Wade? I'm sure. 2 hours later, I received a text message with an address and a time. I drove across town to a warehouse district I'd known well in my youth, places where problems were solved permanently and questions weren't asked. Patrick Mullins was waiting for me, tied to a chair in the center of an empty building. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, and his eyes held the desperate terror of a man who had finally realized the game was over. Wade, Patrick gasped as I approached. Thank God. These men, they're insane. They think I owe them money. I pulled up a chair and sat down facing him. You do owe them money. $250,000 plus interest. That's impossible. I never borrowed from Russians. No, but you stole money that was going to be used to pay them back, I said, my voice calm, conversational. You see, Patrick, I've been doing business with Arturo Haynes for years. Why? I needed investors for my first shop. Arturo connected me with some international financiers. Russians, as it happens. Patrick's face went white. You paid them back years ago. I did. With money that technically belonged to you, since you'd stolen it from me, I smiled. Which means you owe them the money I used to pay my debt with, plus 15 years of compound interest. The math was fictional, but Patrick was too terrified to question it. Sometimes the most effective lies are the ones that sound just plausible enough. I don't have that kind of money. I know. That's why we're here. I stood and walked to where Clarence was waiting with 2 other men Patrick probably recognized from his nightmares. Patrick Mullins, I said formally. You made the mistake of thinking you could steal from me. You made the mistake of thinking you could seduce my wife and destroy my life. Most importantly, you made the mistake of thinking I was just another mark to be conned and discarded. I nodded to Clarence. You were wrong. The last thing Patrick saw was Wade Wu walking away, leaving him to face the consequences of a life built on destroying other people's trust. I didn't watch what happened to Patrick Mullins. I didn't need to. Some lessons are more effective when they remain private between teacher and student. I taught enough lessons in my youth to know that Patrick would understand the message clearly. 3 days later, his disappearance made the local news as a missing person case. His apartment abandoned, his car found at the airport, conflicting reports about whether he boarded a flight to Mexico or simply vanished. The police investigation was perfunctory. Patrick Mullins had no family, few friends, and a history of leaving town abruptly. People like him disappeared all the time. I felt no guilt. In my experience, men who made careers out of destroying other people's lives rarely lived long enough to enjoy retirement. I had simply accelerated the inevitable. But Jessica was a different matter. I found her on a Thursday evening, sitting alone in the same restaurant where we'd had our confrontation with Patrick. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of consequences she'd never imagined. I heard about Patrick, she said without looking up when I sat across from her. Did you? The police came by my apartment yesterday. They're asking questions about his financial dealings, his associates. She finally met my eyes. They asked about you. What did you tell them? The truth. That Patrick used to work for you. That we'd met with him recently about some business opportunity. That I hadn't seen him since. I nodded. Smart. She laughed bitterly. Too little, too late for smart. We sat in silence for several minutes, two people who'd shared 15 years of marriage looking at each other like strangers, which, I reflected, we probably always had been. I never meant for it to go this far, Jessica said finally. Yes, you did. You just didn't think you'd get caught. No, I mean, I never meant to hurt you. Not really. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was the same self-serving rationalization I'd heard from every criminal I'd ever known, the belief that wanting something badly enough justified taking it. You took out a life insurance policy on me, Jessica. $2 million. She flinched. That wasn't. It wasn't what you think. Then what was it? Insurance? In case something happened naturally? I wasn't going to. She trailed off, unable to finish. I leaned back. But you thought about it. The silence stretched between us like a confession. What happens now? Jessica asked. Now you disappear. You take whatever money you manage to hide from both Patrick and me, and you start over somewhere. I'll never see you again. And if I don't? My smile was cold. Then you'll discover that Patrick wasn't the only one who owed dangerous people money. Her face went ashen. Wade, please. You have 1 week. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. If you ever contact me, if you ever try to come back, if I even hear your name mentioned in this town again, what happened to Patrick will look like mercy compared to what happens to you. I walked away without looking back, leaving Jessica to contemplate the ruins of a life she destroyed through her own greed and betrayal. Outside, I sat in my car for several minutes, feeling something that might have been sadness if I were the type of man who indulged in such emotions. 15 years of marriage gone. Not just ended, but revealed to have been a lie from the beginning. But I had survived worse losses. I'd survived poverty, violence, betrayal by people I trusted more than Jessica. I'd built an empire from nothing once before, and I could do it again if necessary. My phone buzzed. A text from Clarence. Package handled, no loose ends. I deleted the message and started my car. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of rebuilding my life without the weight of people who had never deserved my trust. It would be different this time. Better. Because I had learned something valuable from Jessica and Patrick's betrayal, the only person I could truly trust was myself. And sometimes, that was enough. 6 months later, I stood in the office of my fourth auto shop, watching the morning crew prepare for another day. The business had expanded faster than I'd projected, fueled by insurance money from Patrick's theft and the liquidated assets from my divorce settlement. The insurance company had paid out quickly once I provided evidence of Patrick's systematic embezzlement. They'd been satisfied with the police report of Patrick's disappearance and showed no interest in investigating further. People like Patrick disappeared all the time, and insurance companies preferred simple explanations. My legal troubles had been minimal. Oliver Doyle had structured everything perfectly: the divorce, the business transfers, even the insurance claims. Jessica's signature on various documents had made her the legal owner of several debts she'd never known about, while I emerged clean and profitable. The new shop was in the part of town where I'd grown up, a neighborhood that had gotten worse since I'd left it behind. But I remembered what it felt like to be young and hungry and looking for someone to give you a chance. I hired locally, paid well, and asked no questions about my employees' backgrounds as long as they showed up and worked hard. Clarence Comolm stopped by every few weeks, ostensibly to discuss security, but actually to provide updates on situations that required monitoring. Jessica relocated to Phoenix, Clarence reported during one of these visits. Working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Low profile, no contact with anyone from her past. Good, I said. You wanted to keep tabs on her? I considered this. Jessica was broken, exiled, living in fear of consequences that might never come. It was a fitting punishment, but it was also complete. She posed no further threat. No, I said. Let her go. Clarence nodded. What about the other matter? What other matter? Officer Seth Mayer, the one who warned you about Jessica and Patrick. I'd been wondering when this conversation would come. Officer Mayer had risked his career to warn me, and I didn't forget debts like that. What about him? His daughter needs surgery. Leukemia. Insurance won't cover the experimental treatment that might save her life. I was quiet for a moment, remembering another young police officer who had faced similar circumstances years ago. How much? $200,000. Handle it. Anonymous donation through one of the medical charities. Consider it done. After Clarence left, I walked through my shops, speaking with employees, checking on projects, maintaining the personal connections that made my business more than just another repair service. I'd learned long ago that loyalty was built on countless small interactions, not grand gestures. My phone rang as I was reviewing inventory reports. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Wade Wu. Mr. Wu, this is Detective Angela Maddox with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm investigating the disappearance of Patrick Mullins. I was hoping you might have a few minutes to answer some questions. I felt a familiar calm settle over me. Of course, Detective. When would be convenient? Actually, I'm in the area now. Could I stop by your shop? I'll be here. Detective Maddox arrived 20 minutes later, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and the kind of patient demeanor that suggested she was very good at her job. I met her in my office, offering coffee and projecting the helpful attitude of a successful businessman with nothing to hide. I understand Patrick Mullins used to work for you, she began. Yes, about 5 years ago. I had to let him go for theft. Did you press charges? No. It was a relatively small amount, and I believe in second chances. Detective Maddox made notes. When was the last time you saw Mr. Mullins? About 2 months ago, he contacted me about some business opportunity involving international real estate. We met for dinner with my wife, ex-wife, to discuss it. How did that meeting go? My expression darkened slightly. Detective, I discovered during that meeting that Patrick had been having an affair with my wife and stealing money from my business accounts. I told him to stay away from me and my family. Did you threaten him? I told him that if I saw him again, I'd call the police and press charges for theft and fraud. I should have done that 5 years ago. Detective Maddox studied my face. Your ex-wife confirmed this version of events. I'm sure she did. You went through a divorce recently. Yes. Discovering your wife is cheating tends to end a marriage. Where were you on the night of March 15th? I pretended to think. Home alone. My ex-wife had moved out by then. I ordered Chinese food and watched television. I probably have receipts if you need them. That won't be necessary right now. She closed her notebook. Mr. Wu, do you have any idea what might have happened to Patrick Mullins? I was quiet for a moment, as if considering. Detective, Patrick Mullins was a professional con artist who made a career out of stealing from people and disappearing before facing consequences. Based on what I learned about him during our investigation of the theft, he had enemies in several states and owed money to some very unforgiving people. What kind of people? The kind who don't call the police when someone fails to pay their debts. Detective Maddox nodded slowly. Thank you for your time, Mr. Wu. If you think of anything else that might be helpful, please call me. She handed me her card and left. I waited until her car disappeared from the parking lot, then called Clarence. We just had a visitor. I know. She's been asking questions around town for the past week. Very thorough. But she's not finding anything useful because there's nothing to find. Because we're very good at our jobs. I smiled. Good. That evening, I sat in my study, the same room where I discovered Jessica's betrayal 6 months ago. The safe now contained different documents, insurance policies that protected only me, bank statements showing healthy balances I controlled completely, and business contracts that would ensure my security for years to come. I thought about Jessica, probably lying awake in some cheap apartment in Phoenix, wondering if every knock on the door might be someone coming to collect on debts she didn't understand. I thought about Patrick, whose final lesson in consequences had been more permanent than I had originally planned. Most of all, I thought about the future. I was 43 years old, financially secure, and completely free of people who might betray me. I'd learned to trust carefully and punish thoroughly, and those lessons would serve me well in whatever came next. My phone buzzed with a text from Officer Seth Mayer. "Mr. Wu, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for my daughter. The doctors say the treatment is working. I'll never forget this kindness." I smiled and deleted the message. Some debts were worth paying, and some favors were worth returning. But from now on, Wade Wu would choose very carefully who earned his trust and loyalty. Because Wade Wu had learned the most important lesson of all: in a world full of predators, the only way to survive was to be the apex predator. And I was very good at surviving. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between letting someone get away with betrayal or fighting for what's yours, no matter the cost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear your take on this.